As a part of your class assignments this week, you've been asked to look through the Code of Ethics of the National Association of Social Workers. NASW is the professional organization, and it is a nationwide organization of social workers. When you, in fact, at the present time, as a student social worker, you're eligible to join as a student at a very reduced rate. And there, and I this isn't intended to be an advertisement for NASW membership. I believe it's a smart thing for you to do as a professional or as a future professional to join and maintain your membership in NASW for a number of different reasons, which involve social action. NASW's main headquarters is actually, I believe, on the mall in Washington, D.C., the National Mall. And they are very active in lobbying efforts to support different kinds of causes, particularly in terms of women's rights and poverty and AIDS and a lot of those kinds of things that other professional organizations really aren't all that interested in. And so, aside from that, NASW advocates for you as a student and as a professional in the field, and does a lot to raise the professionalism and the image of the profession in the nation. They have a national publication which you receive as a member, with a number of different articles in it about both in terms of practice topics as well as about what's going on in the profession around the nation. Introduces you to a number of kind of important people around the nation involved in the social work profession, and lets you know who the legislators and Congress people are that that are kindly disposed towards our causes. NASW also has an online journal with a number of very professional articles in it. Great for your research for future classes, by the way. And social work professors dearly love you to pull articles from the NASW journal. That used to be a paper journal, but they stopped, I think, unfortunately, stopped publishing it in hardback or paper form, and now it's strictly online. But in any event, and there's a number of other publications that you're also eligible to receive, although you'd have to pay for those those publications and different practice specialties as well. If you're interested in looking at NASW, by the way, the website is naswdc.org. That's NASWDC, like Debbie Charlie.org. So, one of the things that NASW does in maintaining the professionalism of those who participate or who practice in the field is to have established a code of ethics that is a standard of practice for us and all of us with social work degrees and who are social workers ascribe to this code of ethics. If, as a practitioner, you violate the code of ethics, other professionals or your clients or members of the public, for that matter, can file complaints with the NASW, and they'll investigate those complaints and either determine them to be valid or not, and take action regarding your membership in NASW, make recommendations for and against hiring and all sorts of things. And so this is kind of a serious thing, and although I'm talking about some potentially punitive things that occur, I would anticipate that none of you would ever be called up on ethics violations, at least, any violation or any unethical thing that you actually did. So in order to make sure you don't do that, you need to know a little bit about what's in the Code of Ethics, and that's one of the reasons why it is that I assigned you to look through this. Now, hopefully you have read the Code of Ethics. It's rather extensive, and this is going to be just a thumbnail sketch of that code. I do refer you to the appendix in the back of the book with the code to look more specifically at some of these issues. Just a little bit before we get into the actual code, just to talk about values. It's something that I am always preaching about and talking about in these classes. That we all have our own set of values that we believe in, and as much as possible, I think it behooves an individual who's entering the social work field to try to conform his or her professional values and perhaps personal values to the values of the profession. That doesn't mean that you can't think differently or that you might not hold values that are in something of a contradiction with the values of the profession, but you need to be very aware of this, and you need to be very aware of how that conflict might impact your ability to practice with certain types of clients over the years. Our values are our beliefs, preferences, or assumptions about what we believe to be desirable or good for human beings. And it says here they cannot be scientifically investigated or proven. And that's because, well, values, in many people's minds at least, values are relative. There are others who say that's simply not true, but I do believe that. I think that one's values have a lot to do with the culture you grow up in and the belief systems that you were raised with, and the kinds of experiences that you've had over the years. Values affect how we practice. Values affect how we see our clients. Values affect how we interact with our clients. So it's very important for you to be aware of where your values are and what they are. And one of the things that's really kind of interesting about the work that we do is that sometimes one of the things that we're doing is we're helping people define and clarify their own values so they know where to go for how to proceed. But it's very important to keep in mind that when our values come into conflict with the values of our clients, it is the client's values that take primacy, not our own. We should not impose our values on others. Ethics kind of grow out of values, and ethics involve a conduct or a code of behavior, let's say, that arise from values that we hold. And so the ethical code sometimes has contradictions within it, and that's material for another class. And you may have that class at some point during the course of your training. But if not, a good course in ethics, sometimes professional ethics, is a really good thing for you to have as a social worker. If for whatever reason your social work department doesn't offer this, and sometimes you can find classes on ethics in philosophy classes, and while those what you're studying there may not directly impact your social work practice as much as a good social work ethics course would. Nonetheless, it kind of can get you schooled in terms of how to think about these things, because sometimes you have two ethical values that come into conflict with each other at the same time, and you have to determine which one is more important, or the one that should hold sway in that particular situation. This is one of the places that supervision becomes critical for you, and it may be peer consultation, it could be consultation with your immediate supervisor, could be consultation with a professional mentor. But when you run into ethical dilemmas such as this, really encourage you to talk that over with other professionals. So the NASW Code of Ethics has 6 core values that are identified at the very beginning. And that is service, social justice, the dignity and worth of the person, the importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence. So this kind of gives you a sense of what it is that, as far as values are concerned, that social workers should be aware of and should be able to subscribe to. This notion that we are here to serve others and to serve society, that we are to act in the interests of social justice and to encourage social justice in all spheres, to value the dignity and the worth of every human being, whether it's someone who is a person who lives a life that we don't understand, or someone of a different social or economic group, someone who has broken the law or who has hurt others. All individuals we encounter has dignity and worth. That human relationships are important, and that we always act with that in mind, that we don't, not only our relationship with our client, but that we always respect the importance of the relationships the client has in their life, and that we help the client to nurture those relationships. We act with integrity. That means that what we say is what we do, that we can be trusted. When we make commitments, we keep them. And that other individuals can count on us being genuine and upfront with them. And finally, competence, that we take it upon ourselves to develop the knowledge and skills necessary to be effective in helping others, and that we never misrepresent our areas of competence. Many other facets to each of those 6 values. I'm just giving you the thoughts that come to my mind as I consider them. The purpose of the NASW, I should say, Code of Ethics, is to identify our social work values, provide us with some guidelines for how we do our practice, to address ethical dilemmas, that is, to help us identify how we deal with dilemmas in ethics, to to give us a code of behavior and conduct to which we can be held professionally accountable. And that is, by the way, one sign of a profession is that that profession is self-regulating, sort of that self-policing and self-regulating, that there is a code of behavior that is expected of members in that particular field of practice. And so that's one of the signs of a true profession is accountability, professional accountability imposed by the organization itself upon its members. The code also helps us to identify or to uphold rather missions, goals, and ethics that are a part of our profession, and they set specific standards for practice in certain areas that can be used to judge social work conduct. There are 6 areas where the Code of Ethics establishes practice standards related to social workers' ethical responsibility, and we're going to touch on each of these and what is in each of these areas. This is the social worker's responsibility to clients, to colleagues, the social worker's ethical responsibility in practice settings, as a professional, responsibility to the profession of social work itself, and responsibility to the broader society. First, in the area of the social worker's ethical responsibilities to clients. And I will tell you, I believe I have all the areas here. I may have missed one, but I think I have all the areas that are covered. I combined some of them at the end, and I'll talk about them in a moment. But first of all, that commitment to clients, that essentially that you're devoted to your clients and to helping your clients, as well as the fact that when you do say you're going to do something with a client, that you follow through with that. We respect the client's right to self-determination. This is sort of one of the key principles, one of the key values in our field. It essentially says that it is up to the client to determine what the client does. It is not up to us to impose things on them. Now, interestingly, in certain kinds of jobs you get, for instance, if you're working in a prison or in child protection, for instance, the concept of self-determination is a little different than it is if you're working at a neighborhood recreation center, or you're working with a couple who are having marital difficulties, let's say, or a teenager who's having some sort of dilemma about whether or not he or she should participate in a sexual relationship, let's say, with a peer or something along that line. In some situations, it's very clear. We help clients think through their own values, their own principles, the impact of decisions on their lives, and help them to arrive at their own choices about what they do. In other fields, such as child protection and, say, corrections and things like that, there are limitations as to what clients can do, but still, even within those limitations, self-determination is still a part of the process. For instance, in child protection, some of the latest developments as far as case planning, for instance, goes, where the workers have always been encouraged to work with the clients to identify things that should be in their case plans. More and more now, the emphasis is being placed on the client identifying what ought to be in their case plan, and the client, certainly the worker is going to be involved in some guidance of those things, so that the parent is working on things that will improve the safety of the child and make them better able to be parents. But more and more power and authority is being given to parents in determining how they go about making the changes they need to make. So within certain boundaries, parents have the ability to practice self-determination, even in a field such as that. Informed consent. The clients will sign what we call releases that enable us to talk to other people who have been involved in their lives professionally, and it's important that clients understand what they're signing, that you don't just say sign this here and they go ahead and sign it and they don't realize what they're giving permission for. That's informed consent. Competence, that we be competent, that we have skills and knowledge that are represented accurately as we work with individuals. Cultural competence is actually one of those areas that I believe was added in the 2008 revision to the Social Work Code, and that says that we are obligated to understand individuals of other groups, whether that be ethnic and racial groups, or that be age groups, or gender groups, or sexual orientation groups, or whatever it might be. That we value diversity, and that we understand and learn as much as we can about other cultures and other groups, and that we respect the particular culture of those groups. That's one of the reasons why I'm going to introduce a diversity project for the group project to you in another week or so. The ethical responsibilities deal with such things as conflicts of interest, dual relationships, for instance. And I have dual relationships mentioned below, but I think it really goes into conflicts of interest where um, if you're working with an individual who has a business in town, if you have an opportunity really to, um, well, say they run a particular business where they repair homes, the cleanest thing to do is not to contract with your client to work on your home. Because the client may feel obligated to provide you reduced fees or charge you less or something along those lines. And so whenever possible, the idea is to keep those relationships clean and simple, and to not have two different kinds of relationships with your clients. There are other things about conflicts of interest as well, but that's one example. Confidentiality, of course, is another key thing here, that the clients have to know that what they tell you is private. There are exceptions to that, which is that if a client, and you're required to inform clients of this, those exceptions when you start talking with them, that if a client threatens to harm themselves, or if the client, and they can carry that out, and the client threatens to hurt another person, we're required by law to report those things to other individuals. If the client's threatening someone, to report it to police and let the individual know that their life is being threatened. Also, in all 50 states, you are required to report instances of abuse and neglect that are reported to you in your practice to the authorities, and that is of children, and in most states also required to report elder or adult abuse as well. There's other things involved in this list involving clients having access to the records. They should be able to gain copies of their records when they need it. We never have a sexual relationship with a client, past or present. If we have had a sexual relationship with an individual in the past, we should not establish a professional relationship with them now. There should always be clarity in this. This is not only with the individuals themselves, but this also involves individuals that are close to them. So that if you're working with children, it is not permissible for you to develop a romantic or sexual relationship with the child's parent, for instance, or sibling, or whatever. And so there's a movie that was out with Barbara Streisand and Nick Nolte, and I'm trying to remember the name of the film. That was out in the 80s, where a psychiatrist of a suicidal woman starts meeting with her brother to get information about her past, and they get engaged. They're engaged in a sexual relationship, and she would lose her license under those circumstances, and it really irritates me when I see those things portrayed in the media, because it kind of underlies, it really undermines her professionalism and kind of supports some notions that people sometimes have about therapists and counselors and workers and what they're all about. The Prince of Tides, that's the name of the movie. It's a good story, but it's very inaccurate in terms of the portrayal of that relationship, at least what ought to be. Physical contact, that we just don't put our hands on our clients any more than is absolutely necessary. And this includes children. My social work with children professor in my master's training told us, particularly in terms of sexually abused children, to never touch children until they've reached out for you. That includes shaking their hand, and because with sexually abused children, their own personal space has been violated by others that they trust in the world, and so we should never touch our clients without their permission. And even then, I will caution to you that touching clients should be minimized, because no matter what you may intend in the touch, the client may read it differently. Other things that are not permitted: sexual harassment. Don't use derogatory language in your interactions with clients or referring to your clients. If you have a client who lacks decision-making capacity, that you make decisions on their behalf if it's your role, very responsibly and carefully. Or you refer them to individuals who can, such as adult guardians. And finally, there are some provisions regarding a payment of services, interruption of services, and termination of services. So you can see that there's a broad range of areas that the ethical code directs us in terms of how we interact with clients. It's very important that you be familiar with them. In areas of responsibility to colleagues, respect for other individuals, and that includes professional respect for those who disagree with us, who may have contrary opinions to our own about clients, that we always work in a respectful atmosphere with those persons. Confidentiality, what a client, or what a colleague says to you about one of their clients, that you must practice the same confidentiality as you would if they were your own client. That we collaborate with individuals of other disciplines in respect. That would include legal profession and medical profession and law enforcement, other psychological and social professions such as psychology and psychiatry, etc., etc. Disputes among colleagues. There are some provisions there about how we don't take advantage of our colleagues because they are having a dispute with management, or nor do we work to inflame disputes among colleagues. Consultation, that we do provide consultation to others and seek consultation when necessary. We make referral to services for colleagues, and that we handle those referrals appropriately and assist the client in making that move when necessary. This also governs sexual relationships. So, for instance, college professors should not have a sexual relationship with their students. Supervisors and people in administration do not have sexual relationships with their employees. And if you're discouraged from having a sexual relationship with professional colleagues on your work site, and if you have a sexual relationship with a colleague, it's your responsibility to ensure that that it is not something that intrudes upon your capacity to do your job responsibly. But those things are discouraged. Again, guidelines about sexual harassing behaviors and talk. And then what to do about colleagues who appear to be impaired, to be incompetent, practicing outside of their field of competence, or acting unethically. Generally speaking, you approach your colleague first about that, and if the colleague doesn't respond appropriately, then go to supervisors and ultimately to the profession if necessary. In practice settings, there are responsibilities defined in area of supervision and consultation, education and training. We're expected to continue to expand our knowledge and to keep fresh in the field, so to pursue continuing education. If we're a supervisor, to complete employee performance evaluations when they're due, to maintain client records appropriately, and this is an area, by the way, that I'll tell you as a supervisor is a hard thing for a lot of social workers, because we want to be out there working with people, and really staying at our desk and keeping records is troublesome. And good client records is very vital. It creates a record of what you have done, so that if your relationship with the client should end for whatever reason, the next person that comes along doesn't have to go back through all of those things again. It's a protection for the client, it's a protection for you, and it's every bit as important as the face-to-face contact you have with clients. So always be ready to document and take that responsibility seriously. There are areas about billing, how to transfer clients, administration, continuing education, commitments to employers. Essentially, when you take a job and you say you're going to stick around, that you stick around. Now, everybody in the professional life, I think, wants to advance and to improve their career and improve their lives. And so opportunities that do come along sometimes unexpectedly to take a better job, or to take a job with more responsibility or greater pay or something along those lines. And so at times when you've taken a job and your employer seems to depend upon you for being there, it isn't unethical for you to leave that position, but it is required of you that you give consideration to your employer, that you talk to your employer, give them proper notice, do what you can to assist in your transition away, prepare your clients properly, those kinds of things. Commitments to employers is a big part of the job. And there's also some responsibilities about labor management dispute. And there's nothing in our code of ethics that tells us we can't go on strike if that's appropriate. We just have to make sure that we keep our clients' needs in mind and consideration when you do that. And that's a complex matter and something I would encourage you to consult with other professionals or even NASW itself if that situation ever presents itself to you. As professionals, we're expected to maintain our competence, to avoid discrimination for any reason, for any person, to conduct ourselves in our private lives in a way that would never interfere with our ability to act as appropriate professionals. You may say, well, what I do after hours has nothing to do with what I do on the job. And that may or may not be true. If you live in a small town, and for instance, and after hours, every night you go to the bar and you have a couple of beers, and then you go home and you find yourself down the bar from somebody who's a client of another person in your agency, and they see you there night after night after night. That may wear down your professional. That may wear down the reputation of the agency and wear down your own professional image in the community and impact your ability to do work with others. And so, even in your private life, if there's a nexus, a connection to your in your business life, you have to be very, very careful. In your professional life, I mean, you have to be very, very careful about your conduct away from the job. Never participate in fraud, deception. If you're never practice impaired, and don't misrepresent your credentials at any time. Don't be unnecessarily soliciting for clients, and particularly when they belong to other organizations and agencies. And always give credit where credit is due. Don't take credit for work that isn't yours, and make sure that others know when someone else has done some work that you're presenting to them. Your responsibilities to the profession, including maintaining the integrity of the profession, and that has something to do with you maintaining your competence, your continuing education, respecting your clients, and the dignity and worth of individuals. All of those kinds of things we've really been talking about. If you do those things, then you're protecting the integrity of the profession. And to participate in an evaluation and research as much as possible. Doesn't mean you have to go back to school and become a researcher, but it does mean that if you have an opportunity to participate in surveys that will advance the knowledge of the profession, you're expected to participate in those surveys whenever possible. If you do research and you do conduct evaluations and the information is such that it could be of benefit to the profession, you're expected to share that information, not to hoard it and keep it private for your own gain. Of course, you always have to, in evaluation, for instance, you always have to protect the confidentiality of clients in doing so. But the idea is that we should be constantly contributing to the profession as we grow in our own knowledge. Finally, ethical responsibilities to broader society. We should be interested in and participating in causes that promotes social welfare in general, the welfare of the population as a whole. We should be involved in participating in public affairs. In the cases of emergencies, we should make our services available to assist in crises and emergencies, and we should always be ready to participate in social and political action on behalf of our clients and the profession. And so that very quickly wraps up the Social Work Code of Ethics, and truly we can do a whole semester on ethical code and the various implications. It is really interesting sometimes to be engaged in some discussions about ethical dilemmas and debating which of the conflicting values, perhaps, or conflicting ethical standards should take precedence in certain types of situations. It can be a very enlivening thing, and something to help you define your own values and your own belief system as well. So don't ever turn those things down if you get an opportunity to do that. I wish we had the chance in this class for that, but we just don't. And I just want to close this by again going back to the notion of self-awareness and the importance of identifying our own personal values so that we can be sure that we never impose them on our own clients, either consciously or unconsciously. It is not our job to teach clients to conform to our belief systems. Whatever our belief systems are, we must be comfortable with being able to surrender the choices about the direction life goes to the clients themselves. It is their values that are most important, and if you encounter situations where your client's values are in such conflict with your own that you cannot honestly practice with them, you need to go to your supervisor and try to get taken off of their case if at all possible. There are times, by the way, in many schools of social work, when you sign on, particularly in the master's level, you sign an agreement that says that if your instructors feel that, or your mentors believe that you should be participating in some therapy to help you define what's going on with your own value system, and maybe deal with any conflicts that might arise in your education. And so I'm just saying this, that you don't have to wait for somebody to tell you this, and probably no one's ever going to tell you that. But sometimes it's very useful for a professional that is helping other people to have their own therapy, and to process what's going on in their own lives because of their work. And so it's something you should never be ashamed to think of or to consider, because it can be something that's very useful. Now, this is different from the consultation involved in supervision. This, we're talking about, some real kind of personal interactions in therapy here. So all of that said, that's a very brief summary of the Code of Ethics, and I hope it's been useful to you in understanding what is in that code. If you wind up with any kind of questions, or you see any sense of you're not sure of what particular standards mean or why they're there, I hope you'll bring them up during the course of the semester in discussion boards or in your journal entries, so that we can explore it a little bit further. Thank you.